I traveled back to the day when he confessed his love to me. The boy in a white shirt had gentle eyes and eyebrows. He said, "I like you." In the next second, I heard his inner thoughts, she actually believed it. How disgusting. The cicadas on the camphor trees were chirping loudly. The people around were jeering, but it was the kind of jeering as if they were watching a joke. Someone nearby whistled and said with a smile, "Case has rather plain tastes recently." The boy in the white shirt ignored them and just stood in front of me with gentle eyes and eyebrows. The sunlight shone through his shoulders, making him look like Prince Charming in a fairy tale. Case leaned against the handlebars of my bicycle, bent down to look at me, and his warm breath fell on my face. He said, "Saraphina, I like you." I saw myself in his eyes, a thin and weak girl covered by the roomy school uniform, a bit anemic. That was what I looked like at the age of 17. I was still stunned on the spot. My face must have been flushed red without even looking at it, and my fingertips were trembling. After all, this was Case, whom I had secretly loved for a long time. Before I could blurt out, "I like you too," I heard the inner thoughts of the clean-looking boy in front of me. She actually believed it. How disgusting. I was startled for a moment and then looked up at Case. He was smiling gently, and there was no sign of disgust in his heart at all. He was waiting for my answer with full confidence. After all, the whole South City No. 1 middle school knew that I was Case's bootlicker. I pursed my lips and took a step back, saying in a trembling voice, "Sorry, I don't like you." Case's expression immediately turned ugly. Just then, a boy with white hair walked by arrogantly. He was lazy yet tall and straight, as if he hadn't noticed the farce here. I recognized him. He was the school bully of our school and also Case's sworn enemy. I pointed at the white-haired school bully and said to Case, "I like that type. You know what I mean." I shook the handlebars of my bicycle and said, Case, get out of my way." Case must have been dumbfounded. He couldn't understand how the girl who had been all eyes on him just a second ago now told him to get lost. He stiffly put his hands on my handlebars with a strong sense of uneasiness between his eyebrows and pursed his lips to ask, "What's wrong with you?" Boys are naturally much stronger than girls. With him holding it, I couldn't pull my bicycle at all. Sweat slid anxiously down my forehead. In the next second, however, someone took my handlebars with one hand and easily broke free from Case's grip. "Can't you hear? She told you to get lost." The voice was cold, tired, and a bit hoarse. I looked up. The side face of the school bully had excellent lines. His short, silver-white dyed hair shone brightly in the light, looking really cool and arrogant. In the next second, I heard the flustered inner thoughts of the school bully, "Damn it, she's looking at me." The school bully rescued me from Case's confession and pushed my pink bicycle forward. A passing younger brother teased him, "Axel, when did you stop riding your motorcycle?" The school bully kicked that person and cursed, "Get lost." I walked beside him, feeling as if there were needles on my back. I summoned up my courage and said, "School bully, Axel." I was stunned for a while before realizing that he was telling me his name. He lowered his eyes and asked softly, "Do you like me?" Subconsciously, I wanted to shake my head, but then I heard his sinister inner thoughts. Those who use me as a shield have all been dealt with by me, buried in cement columns. So my head immediately changed direction and nodded vigorously several times. Axel had a pair of peach blossom eyes. Now he smiled with his eyes narrowed, stopped walking, freed a hand to touch my face, and his thumb touched the mole under my eye. He said slowly, "Help me with my homework in the future, come to watch me play ball, and send me to and from school. Do to me what you did to Case before, but 10 times better. Got it?" I was a bit confused and asked, "What do you mean?" He condescended to pat my face and said, "It means that I accept your pursuit of me." Axel, with his silver hair, wearing ear studs, had the words "hard to please" written all over his face. Suddenly, I felt that it would be better for me to go back and continue the battle with Case. On my way home, I remembered this was a villa area. I was only brought back from the countryside at the age of 17. At that time, I didn't understand many things, for example, why my mother was the legal wife, but I had a half-sister, Ophelia, who was a few months older than me. Everyone liked Ophelia, including Case. Case and Ophelia were childhood sweethearts in the first place. Even when he was nice to me at first, it was just to persuade me to donate one of my kidneys to her. If Ophelia hadn't been sick, the Ophelia family would never have wanted to bring me back in their lifetime. To them, I wasn't a person but medicine. But now, their intentions hadn't been revealed yet. Ophelia, who was recuperating at home due to illness, was watering the flowers in the garden when she heard me coming in. She raised her head and smiled gently. You're back so late. We've already finished dinner. It doesn't matter anyway. I didn't have the right to sit at the table and have dinner. Case confessed his love to me today. Suddenly, the watering can in her hand fell to the ground, and the water splashed on her face. She forced a smile and said, Really? Congratulations. I raised my eyebrows in surprise and asked, Of course I didn't accept. How could he be worthy of me? In an instant, I was drowned by countless vicious and hateful inner thoughts, all from the usually kind Ophelia, a human kidney bag. Instead of being grateful to us, how dare she say such things? Case only told me that he would approach Saraphina. He didn't say that he would confess his love to her. She must have seduced him. Saraphina, you should look in the mirror. You're so ugly and flat. I curved my lips into a smile. They still wanted to rely on me to survive. Nice try. I ran upstairs. As I was going upstairs, I heard Ophelia coughing violently behind me. When I was going upstairs, the nanny, who was relatively close to our family in the house, stopped me and whispered, Madam ordered that no dinner should be left for you. I nodded. It was a common occurrence. When I turned around, I paused for a moment when I heard the nanny's inner thoughts, how pitiful. Before I traveled back, it was exactly the time when Ophelia recovered and was discharged from the hospital successfully with my kidney. Case promised me that it would be the time for his engagement. Unexpectedly, he got engaged, but not to me, but to Ophelia. He endured the nausea and disgust and pretended to be friendly with me, a country girl he looked down upon for so long. Finally, he got what he wanted. On the day of his engagement, he put his arm around Ophelia's waist and said to me, as gently as when he confessed his love in front of many guests, Saraphina, why don't you look in the mirror? I looked down and saw that on the clean and reflective floor, my figure was swollen due to the medication, which was a world of difference from the slender and bright Ophelia. Perhaps it had always been like that. At that moment, I felt my heart shattered into pieces. Fortunately, when I woke up from the dream, I traveled back to the time when Case had just confessed his love to me, and I also acquired the ability to hear people's inner thoughts. I opened my phone under the pillow. As soon as I clicked on the chat app, there were over 99 unread messages. There was only one pinned chat, which was from Case. At the age of 17, I really liked him. Messages from Case kept popping up. Probably he was really angry. Case Saraphina, I'll give you one more chance. The confession is still valid. Case, are you deliberately trying to annoy me? Well, you succeeded. Case, stay away from Axel. He's not a good guy. There were several missed calls. Scrolling up, all were the messages I sent. Usually, even if I sent a series of messages, there was no reply from the other side. Occasionally, when Case replied with just one sentence, I would be happy for half a day. Now, Case was still sending me messages continuously. I quickly blocked him with one click. Then I slowly clicked into the grade group. Sure enough, they were discussing the incident in the afternoon. The school hunk and the school bully are competing for a girl out of jealousy. It was a rather boring gimmick. There were also on-site photos attached. I clicked on one photo to take a look, and my face suddenly turned red. In the photo, the silver-haired boy almost held the girl in his arms, reached over her to hold the handlebars of the bicycle, raised his eyes and looked at Case on the opposite side very provocatively, and also raised his eyebrows. The following messages were still flooding the screen. Who is this girl? Even the school beauty, who is a star in the neighboring number 3 middle school, couldn't win Axel's heart. Usually, he doesn't allow us to post his photos. Today, so many photos have been posted, and he didn't even care. It seems that it's for real. I exited the chat box. Just then, there was a new friend request. The online name was CC, and the note was Saraphina Pursuit Target. My heart skipped a beat, and I clicked to accept. Saraphina, I've approved your friend verification request. Now we can start chatting. The other side paused for a moment and then sent a voice message. His voice was low and hoarse. He said, just friends. I wanted to pause the voice message, but in a flurry, I clicked on the video call instead. The other side answered, and a good-looking face appeared on the screen, very close to the camera, as if his eyelashes could touch my face. I unconsciously moved my phone a little farther away. Then I heard a low laugh coming from the screen. Axel laughed and said, "Why is your face so red when talking to me on the video call?" I couldn't say a word for a long time. Then I heard someone shouting behind him on the other side of the screen, trying to come closer. "Axel, we also want to see sister-in-law." It's all over the school forum. Axel didn't even turn around and snorted with a laugh. Get lost. He stretched out his hand to block the screen, as stingy as a child hiding his toys. Well, he was rather childish. After a while, Axel moved his hand away, and the corners of his lips curled up. You couldn't help but make a video call to me after being apart for a while, what? Did you miss me? He pronounced each word softly, almost bewitching. I was just about to explain when suddenly my stomach growled loudly. I was hungry. Before he could react, I quickly pressed the red hang-up button and buried my head in my hands. How embarrassing. It was already night. The Opelia family had a curfew, so I couldn't go out, and there was no dinner left for me at home. I searched the whole room but couldn't find any snacks or bread. I could only resign myself to lying on the bed and enduring it until it was over. There was a tall camphor tree outside the window. If it weren't for this tree growing here, blocking the view and sunlight, this south-facing room wouldn't have been given to me. The leaves were making a rustling sound, and I heard the sound of knuckles gently tapping on the glass. I looked up. The silver-haired boy was climbing on the branches of the camphor tree, looking rather reckless. One hand was gently tapping on the window, and the other hand was carrying a full bag. I quickly got up and opened the window in disbelief. The night wind blew like wildfire. Before traveling back, I heard that Axel went to the Special Forces for close combat training after graduation. His physical fitness was really first class. Axel handed me the bag. His beautiful fingers were well defined. He curled his lips and said, "Dear Miss Saraphina, Axel takeout." He lowered his voice. Would you consider giving it a 5-star rating? After all, who is chasing whom? The next day, Axel gave me the answer. It was indeed me who chased after him. I not only had to wait for him to go to school but also had to run errands for him during breaks. I even had to show up to cheer him on when he played basketball. I brought 2 bottles of sports drinks for Axel as a thank you for the takeout he ordered last night. I walked slowly to the school gymnasium, only to find that there were really a lot of people inside, especially girls. They were shouting the names Axel and Case. It was a basketball game between Class 1 and Class 3, and these two happened to be in those 2 classes respectively. I walked towards Axel. When I looked up, there was a person blocking my way. Case was standing right in front of me. His words from yesterday were still stinging my heart. His expression softened a little, and he reached out to take the drinks in my hand. It had been like this before. When he played ball, I would bring him water. When he studied, I would take notes for him. Occasionally, he would give me a little something nice. Case said, "Since you've brought me water, I'll forgive you for what happened yesterday." I dodged his hand and lowered my eyes. "Excuse me." He froze on the spot as I took a few quick steps towards Axel, who was not far behind him, and handed him the drinks. Axel narrowed his eyes. For some reason, he was in a really good mood and said lazily, "Oh dear, I can't open the bottle cap." I resignedly took back the drinks, unscrewed the caps, and handed them back to him. Axel tilted his head back and took a sip. His Adam's apple bobbed, and he sneered in the direction behind me. Suddenly, I heard his thoughts. Axel was thinking, "TSK, I'm so annoyed by those who are self-obsessed." I turned my head. Case was still standing there, looking a bit embarrassed. His lips were pursed into a thin line. When he saw me looking at him, he averted his dark eyes. He was angry, and I was happy. Axel was in great form. He was unstoppable on the court, like a force of nature, and waves of screams swept through the gymnasium. On the contrary, Case was unusually absent-minded and kept looking in the direction of our side of the spectator stands. Basically, he was getting crushed in the game. Axel's class won without a doubt. When the game ended, Axel walked towards me, looking energetic and confident. I handed him the water. He bent down, hooked his finger, and I obediently moved a little closer. I felt that my face and neck were surrounded by his warm breath. Axel said slowly, "You watched my basketball game. Got nothing to say?" I blinked. The several girls beside us had been shouting Axel is so handsome for half an hour. I looked up at him and said hesitantly, "Axel is so handsome." The next second, an outer coat was thrown over my head, and it was pitch black. It was the school uniform coat that Axel had put aside before going onto the court. It still had a soapy fragrance. I heard someone shouting, "Axel, why are your ears and face so red? Did those guys from Class 1 play dirty and hurt you?" Axel gritted his teeth. "Shut up. Life was much easier when it didn't revolve around Case." My impression of Axel still lingered on the time when I came out of a convenience store and happened to see Axel fighting with people from the neighboring school. I was so scared that I crouched on the ground, afraid of getting hurt by accident. I didn't dare to look up until there was no sound. Only Axel was left standing there. He leaned against the wall and looked at me with a half-smile. I was scared inside. Axel asked, "Do you have any band-aids?" I did have some. After hesitating for a moment, I walked closer and handed him one, but he stretched out his hand. There was a small scrape on his fair hand, and it seemed that he wanted me to put the band-aid on for him. Axel lowered his eyes and asked, "From number 1 middle school?" I nodded. "Which class? What's your name?" I was afraid that this school bully would seek revenge later or even silence me, so I answered vaguely, "I'm the one who has always liked Case." That was true. In number 1 middle school, maybe not many people would know Saraphina, but as Case's admirer, probably everyone had an impression of me. Just as I was tearing off the packaging of the band-aid, Axel suddenly withdrew his hand, and his expression turned cold and boring. I didn't know which sentence had made him angry. When he left, his figure looked a bit thin and staggering. But now, getting along with Axel, I surprisingly found that he was quite obedient, easy to coax, even when he was angry. On the contrary, Case always seemed moody to me. When he was nice to me, it felt like he really liked me. When he was mean to me, he was truly vicious. Fortunately, I probably had nothing to do with him anymore. However, after school, Case came to the Ophelia family. I went downstairs to get some teaching aids and happened to see Ophelia running out of the piano room happily. She half complained and half acted coquettishly, "Case, you haven't come to see me for such a long time." Case was silent for a moment, then he said, "How's your recovery, Ophelia?" Ophelia chattered on, "My health has been a burden on my parents. I'm okay. Don't worry. I'll ask Andy to cut some fruits you like for you." Yesterday, Case interrupted her and pursed his lips. "No need." He raised his eyes and looked upstairs, just happening to meet my eyes as I was on the stairs. He looked at me and said, "I'm here to talk to Saraphina." Ophelia froze instantly, as if she hadn't heard clearly, and repeated, "Brother Case, who are you looking for?" Case ignored her and said slowly, "Saraphina, come down and let's talk." Under his gaze, I slowly walked down the stairs and then stood in front of him. I picked up the must-read for idiots in high school math that I had left downstairs, sighed, and said, "It's not that I'm ignoring you. I'm having a video call with Axel to discuss math problems. He'll be unhappy if I keep him waiting." Ophelia's face turned pale, and Case's face darkened. That night, Ophelia made a fuss all night, insisting on going back to school. She was deeply loved, and her recent health condition was also good, so her family agreed. After her school return procedures were completed, Ophelia's mother condescended to talk to me for the first time in so many words. Her words were half instructions and half threats. Basically, it could be summed up as asking me to be Ophelia's reading companion and servant at school. Ophelia's mother said, "Saraphina, don't forget that it's the resources I provided that enabled you to study here." She had always looked down on me, a country girl, and never taken me seriously. My father started his business with the help of Ophelia's mother, who was from a wealthy family, so naturally, she had a higher status. I meekly agreed. When it was almost over, my father finally got a word in and called my name. "Saraphina." I turned my head. He said, "Don't call Ophelia a sister at school. It's hard to explain. We had the same father, but we were only a few months apart." Who could explain that? Once Ophelia returned to school, it caused a stir. She had been on sick leave for half a semester during her school days before because she was good at managing relationships and was also quite a figure at school. She and Case were in the same class, and recently they had been showing up together all the time. Soon, the rumors between Case and me disappeared on their own. With her parents' support, Ophelia casually ordered me around under her roof. I really had to bow my head. At noon in midsummer, when it was 40 degrees Celsius, I still had to run errands for her little group of friends to buy popsicles. When I came back, I was sweating all over, but I saw them gathered together, laughing. That's Saraphina. She's obviously a poor wretch from the countryside. First, she was pestering Case, and then she hooked up with Axel. Saraphina's grades are terrible. She can't compare to Ophelia in any aspect. Case and Ophelia are childhood sweethearts. "Ophelia, what's your relationship with Saraphina?" "I've never seen such an obedient servant," they said, as if they had heard the funniest joke in the world, and laughed again. Suddenly, someone said, "Hey, Ophelia, Saraphina is just like you." The smile on Ophelia's face froze for a moment and then quickly returned to normal. Saraphina is the daughter of our family's nanny. My father asked for a favor to get her into our school. I interrupted their praise for Ophelia's family's kindness and put the popsicles wrapped in foam boxes on the table. Ophelia reached out and poked around inside. I had a bad feeling. Sure enough, I heard her say, "Saraphina, they've melted. Please go and buy them again." I lowered my eyes and thought about how to fight back. Suddenly, a clear and cold voice rang out, not as gentle as usual. Case said faintly, "Ophelia, you've gone too far." There was silence all around. Ophelia looked up, a bit aggrieved. "Case, you know she's..." She swallowed the rest of the words. For some reason, looking at Case, she didn't dare to say them out loud. I heard Ophelia's thoughts, half angry and half grieved. Ophelia was thinking, obviously, Case and I have the same experience. Why has his attitude changed? I glanced at Case, puzzled. I couldn't understand why he was speaking up for me now. Maybe they had changed their strategy, with one playing the good cop and the other playing the bad cop. I said slowly, "What's too far? Didn't you do the same thing before?" When I first chased after Case, he was really annoying. On a stormy day, he asked me to buy coffee for him. When I came back, I was soaked through, but the coffee wasn't spilled. He just took a casual look and said, "Saraphina, the coffee's cold." Apparently, Case also remembered this incident. The atmosphere around us became even colder, and no one dared to speak in the dead silence. Suddenly, someone lazily hooked his arm around my neck from behind and gently pulled me back. I fell into his arms, bumping into a refreshing summer embrace. I looked up and saw Axel's peach blossom eyes with a half smile. "I wondered why I hadn't seen you these days. So you were running errands for others." Axel swept his eyes over the people present. Those who were looked at by him turned pale. There are still discussion threads about Axel on the school forum. His reputation as a school bully is well known. Asking her to run errands, Axel enunciated clearly, word by word, "Are you worthy?" Axel smiled and told those people to go running. They didn't even dare to say a word and obediently did as they were told. Even Ophelia wasn't exempted. A group of them drank the already melted popsicles and ran around the playground under the scorching sun, attracting classmates to look out from the balconies. The dean of students rushed to the playground in a hurry, his half-bald head shining brightly. The culprit, Axel, was right beside me. His silver hair was very flamboyant. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the people below, still full of hostility. "Axel," I called his name. He turned his head, and the hostility in his eyes instantly disappeared. "Don't do this again next time," I said weakly, my voice very soft. "It has a bad influence." It wasn't that I felt sorry for Ophelia and the others. It was just that it wasn't worth it for Axel to do this for me. Since my mother died, I had basically been on my own. No one had been so nice to me before. Although it was said that Axel had done even more outrageous things before, blatantly violating discipline like this would definitely have a negative impact on him. Axel propped his chin up and moved closer to me. He was so close that I could clearly see his eyelashes. I saw my reflection in his eyes. "Did it make you feel better?" he asked. I was stunned for a moment. "Yes." Axel curved his lips and tapped my forehead with his knuckle. "Then the influence is just fine." With Axel's intervention, Ophelia didn't dare to order me around anymore. Just the name Axel scared her so much that she didn't even dare to complain to her family. Perhaps my words had stimulated Case, and he never bothered me again either. Occasionally, I would see Case and Ophelia walking together at school. One second, Ophelia would look at Case tenderly, but the next second, when she saw me, there was only disgust in her eyes. She had the talent for changing expressions like those in Sichuan opera. However, Case didn't seem as enthusiastic about her as I had imagined, but it had nothing to do with me anyway. I had only one task, to study hard. Recently, there might be one more task, which was to help Axel, a student who was lagging behind, with his tutoring. On the day when the monthly exam results were announced, the bulletin board was surrounded by a crowd of people. My previous grades were not very good, but during those days when I was lying in the hospital bed before I transmigrated back, I had been reading high school textbooks, still thinking that one day I could take the college entrance examination again. So this time, I was also looking forward to my ranking. Ophelia and her friends were gathered in front of the bulletin board. "Ophelia, you're ranked 29th in the grade. That's amazing. How could she not be amazing? Ophelia's family hired special tutors for her every day. The first in the grade is Case, as expected. They turned around and saw that I was looking for my name, starting from the last place in the grade. So they couldn't help but laugh at me a couple of times. I heard Ophelia say softly, "Some people still have self-awareness and know where they stand." Suddenly, someone tugged at her sleeve, and the voice trembled. "Ophelia, her ranking seems to be ahead of yours, just a few positions above her." Ophelia suddenly stared at the bulletin board, her face turning pale. "Someone read out my ranking, Saraphina, 20th. It was surprisingly high. Suppressing my joy, I finally found Axel's name. He had already jumped to the middle level. The Saraphina tutoring class had achieved remarkable results. I turned around, and Axel was walking towards me from the end of the long corridor with a group of boys. It seemed that they were going to play basketball. I was afraid that he wouldn't see me, so I stood on tiptoe and happily called his name. "Axel." He lifted his eyelids and looked towards me. 300th place. I smiled brightly, extremely excited and proud. "You got the 300th place, Axel." Axel paused in his steps. The people beside him joked around with grinning faces and nudged Axel with their elbows. "Axel, your girlfriend is so cute." He looked at me, and under the watchful eyes of everyone, the face of the school bully suddenly turned bright red. In an instant, I heard Axel's inner thoughts, and he sounded a bit annoyed. He thought to himself, "She's so good at this." There were many people who liked Axel, but most of them just had secret crushes on him because they were intimidated by his reputation as a school bully. However, there were only a few who openly showed their affection, and Luna, the school beauty from the neighboring number 3 middle school, was one of them. She had starred in a few moderately famous youth dramas. I heard that Axel had fought for her before, but I didn't know why they didn't end up together. She blocked me at the school gate early in the morning. Axel and I now went to school together. He had gone to the convenience store to buy me breakfast, and I was waiting for him at the school gate. Unexpectedly, Luna showed up first. Luna was very beautiful. If Ophelia was like the pure white jasmine, Luna was like a passionate rose. "Are you Saraphina?" I nodded. Luna got straight to the point. "You can't win against me. Stay away from Axel. Axel may seem cold on the outside, but he is kind-hearted. Sometimes he's just too sympathetic, which inevitably gives people the wrong impression. Moreover, everyone on the school forum talked about you last night. If I were you, I'd be too ashamed to come to school. Axel's interest in you will only last for 3 minutes. If you keep persisting, you'll only be the one who gets embarrassed." "The school forum? What forum?" After she finished speaking, her eyes suddenly lit up as she looked behind me and called out affectionately, "Axel." Before I could react, a cup of soy milk and some steamed buns were stuffed into my hands. The silver-haired boy, with a bag of pure milk in his mouth, lowered his head, put a handful of candies into my pocket, and also conveniently zipped up my school bag that I hadn't closed properly. Axel didn't look at Luna and mumbled, "What are you talking about?" I blurted out, "She said you only have a 3-minute thing." My words were ambiguous, and my face turned red. Axel couldn't even hold the milk bag in his mouth properly. He turned his head with a murderous look and stared at Luna. Axel's series of actions just now were done smoothly, as skillfully as if he had done them countless times. Luna stared at Axel's hand that was zipping up my school bag, and her face turned pale. "Axel, you don't even like others getting too close to you. How could you do these things for her?" Axel lifted his eyelids and spat out 2 words, "Who are you?" Those who could become stars usually had good psychological qualities, but Axel managed to break through Luna's defense with just 2 words. When Axel and I were walking towards the school, he suddenly said, "I don't know her. I didn't fight for her either. It's all just baseless rumors." I was stunned for a moment before realizing that Axel was explaining it to me. I looked up at Axel. His fair complexion was even more prominent against his light-colored hair. He said lazily, "I'm not like some people who liked others before liking me." Fortunately, she came to her senses. I wasn't sure who he was mocking with these words. At the end, he raised his eyebrows slightly and hinted at me, "Right, Saraphina?" After the farce in the morning, I had been feeling a vague sense of uneasiness. Sure enough, as soon as I entered the school, I felt that something was wrong. It was especially obvious during the break. The looks I received in the corridor were a bit strange. I heard the inner thoughts from all directions. Saraphina is actually an illegitimate daughter. No wonder she's two-timing. It's in her nature since she was born. If I were her, I wouldn't even dare to see Ophelia, let alone go to school with her. I realized something and opened my phone in the toilet cubicle, logging into the school forum. Sure enough, there was a hot post hanging there, 8818 on the illegitimate daughter Saraphina from number 1 middle school who's two timing. The person who posted it was anonymous, claiming to be an ordinary classmate who couldn't stand Saraphina. The post described my background in a very absurd and dramatic way, completely distorting the facts. It said that Ophelia's parents were the loving original couple. My mother coveted the property of Ophelia's family, schemed to have a child with Ophelia's father, and had been using me to blackmail the Ophelia family all these years. Now, sending me to number 1 middle school was also to make me hook up with rich second-generation kids. The post described how pitiful Ophelia was, even saying that her poor health was caused by my mother when she was in the womb and how shameless I was to cling to Case and Axel. There was no need to read the comments below. They were all full of curses. I was so angry that I felt a bit dizzy. The truth was nothing like that at all. It was actually Ophelia's mother who fell for my father, who had just got married not long ago. She knew he was married but still got involved with him. In the end, they ran away together, and my father never cared about us again. My mother was still hoping that he would change his mind until she died. I left the toilet, washed my face at the wash basin, and someone handed me a tissue. It was Case. He said in a low voice, "I've already sent someone to deal with the matter on the forum. Don't worry." I looked at him through the mirror. The young man in a white shirt had gentle eyes. "Did you know about this all along?" I was referring to the content in the post. Case closed his eyes with a bit of self-loathing and nodded. "I'll suppress this matter. No one will talk about your background. Don't be angry with me. After this is over, just pretend that nothing happened." He didn't even ask me about it but just assumed it was true. He opened his eyes again and looked at me gently. "Look, since the first time we met, I've been helping you," he said. I wiped the water off my face, threw the tissue into the trash can, turned around to look at Case, and said calmly, "Case, I'm not an illegitimate daughter." Since the first time we met, Case had been helping me. When I first arrived here, before I even found the location of Ophelia's family, I got lost in the villa area and was chased around by a big dog that I didn't know which family owned. My mother died of rabies, so I had always been terribly afraid of dogs. It was raining heavily that day. As I was running all the way, the shabby luggage I was carrying dropped all over the place. The dog knocked me down to the ground, and I was so scared that tears came out. But then I heard a whistle, and the big dog immediately got up from me and ran away happily. I wiped my tears, trembling all over, and gathered my pitiful belongings in the rain. Suddenly, an umbrella was held over my head. The hand holding the umbrella had distinct joints. The cold, aloof young man was wearing a white shirt. For a moment, I felt a bit ashamed of myself. "Were you the one who drove the dog away? Did you save me? What's your name?" He said, "I'm Case. I lived under the roof of Ophelia's family and was ignored at school. Only Case had been helping me all along, so I just stayed by his side. Maybe I myself couldn't even tell clearly whether this emotion was really love or not. After all, from the very beginning, he had ulterior motives. Case was quite a complicated person. Sometimes I thought he liked me, as he even wrote his name, Case, on my textbooks. But the next second, he could stiffen his face and cross out the name he had just written. I had always known that he despised and loathed something about me, but I never knew the reason. Now I knew that he had always thought that I was an illegitimate daughter and that the blood flowing in my veins was dirty. It's better to like a dog than to like Case, I thought to myself. I walked smoothly all the way to the entrance of Class 1. Sure enough, I saw a group of people surrounding Ophelia. She was crying sadly, and the people around her were busy comforting her. When they saw me standing at the entrance of the class, they all glared at me angrily. Fortunately, after what happened with Axel last time, no one dared to mock me because they were afraid of offending the school bully. Ophelia had always been gentle on the surface towards me, after all, she needed something from me. But these few times, I didn't know what had stimulated her. First, she insisted on going to school, and then there was the popsicle incident. Basically, our relationship had completely fallen apart. She raised her eyes with red rims around them, and her knuckles turned white from clenching. "Saraphina, can't you just leave our family alone?" I heard her inner thoughts again. Case just went to see her. He used to be as disgusted by these illegitimate children as I was. How could it have changed like this? I leaned against the wall and laughed. Of course not. Ophelia's expression froze. I walked forward, put my hand on her desk, and looked down at her condescendingly. This post distorts the facts. I'm not an illegitimate daughter, the child of the mistress, as someone else claimed. Ophelia had been kept in the dark by her parents and didn't know about their affairs. She really thought that her mother was the original wife. So this misunderstanding happened, and she had always secretly held hostility towards me. When I suddenly said this, she immediately subconscious retorted, "What's your evidence?" I shook my head, straightened up, and looked a bit contemptuous. I don't need evidence. The burden of proof lies with the accuser. The innocent don't need to prove their innocence. I said, "I'll call the police. Justice will give me the answer." Did the person who posted this rumor really think that being anonymous meant they didn't have to take responsibility? Her face turned pale before I even called the police. Justice arrived first. I don't know who said it, but the anonymous function on the forum suddenly went offline. The people beside me covered their phones with books and were also looking at the post. The name of the poster was clearly visible, Ophelia, from Class 1. Everyone looked at Ophelia with extremely strange eyes. They had comforted her for a long time, but unexpectedly, it was she who posted the message. She was really two-faced. Ophelia was rather thin-skinned, with blood rushing to her head. She actually fainted in the VIP ward. Ophelia had just come out after dialysis, her face pale. The nursing workers were busy bustling around, and Ophelia's mother was feeding her the cut fruits. I was being scolded by Ophelia's father. "Saraphina, I'm really disappointed in you. Is this how you repay us, by making your sister so angry that she's hospitalized?" He didn't mention a word about what Ophelia had done. I lowered my eyes in annoyance, looking at the clean floor and thinking of the time when I was alone in the hospital right after I donated my kidney to Ophelia. The family's attitude towards me took a nosedive. When I first came here, I also wanted to show my biological father, whom I hadn't seen for a long time, that I was also an outstanding daughter. But things didn't go as I expected. Fortunately, I didn't care about it anymore long ago. I had already understood the situation. "I heard that you still want to call the police." What nonsense. You don't need to go back to school anymore. After all, those are Ophelia's classmates, and it's not good for her if you do. I'll arrange for you to transfer to another school. Probably realizing that his attitude was a bit too tough, Ophelia's father softened his voice. "We're all family. Let's be understanding of each other, okay?" "No," I said softly. Ophelia's father was stunned. It was the first time I had refused him. "What did you say?" he snapped. My throat felt a bit dry. The atmosphere in the ward froze suddenly. Without warning, the door was opened. Several people were gathered around a silver-haired boy standing at the door. He spread his hands and said, "Saraphina, come here." I quickly walked towards him and asked in a low voice, "Why are you here?" Axel put his hand on my back and snorted with a laugh. "To back you up." Ophelia's father obviously knew Axel, and a bit of flattery showed in his expression. I had no doubt that he would order me to introduce them in the next second. I let out a sigh. I don't know why, but I felt much more confident. Finally, I repeated, I said no. "I'm going to call the police. I won't donate my kidney. Whether Ophelia lives or dies has nothing to do with me. Don't bother me anymore." I turned to look at Ophelia. She was in a panic, clutching the quilt tightly. Ophelia's dislike for me came from being half-sisters with Case and from envy of my good health. I punctured the beautiful dream that she had wrapped herself in for years. "Ophelia, your mother is a proper mistress. Your father is an out-and-out cheater during marriage. Ophelia, you're the illegitimate daughter that you mentioned in your post." After I said all that, I walked out of the ward, leaving a mess behind. I sat on the long corridor of the hospital. Suddenly, someone crouched down in front of me. Axel and his friends had just stayed at the door of the ward for a while longer. Needless to say, they were cleaning up the mess for me. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have left so easily today, I thought. I squeezed my palm and looked into Axel's eyes. "Thank you." The sunlight filtered through his eyebrows and eyes, making them look particularly clear. I hesitated for a moment and still asked, "Why are you so nice to me?" Axel propped his chin up and smiled. "Just talk. Why are you acting like that?" My face suddenly flushed red. "I'm not acting, and I'm not complimenting you. I'm really asking for the reason." Axel furrowed his brows as if he was really thinking. He said, "Does it need a reason?" Some people are just so shiny that when you see them, you want to give them the best of everything. The first time I saw you, I happened to see you being chased around by the dog of the Z family. You were quite special. It was I who whistled to call the dog away. I originally wanted to go up and check on you, but then I saw Case. I was so annoyed at the sight of him that I left. If I had known it was you, I definitely wouldn't have turned around. If I had known it was Saraphina, I definitely wouldn't have let others get ahead of me. But with that turn, Saraphina's eyes were only on Case, and she couldn't see him anymore. He watched her running around for Case, watched her endure grievances but still like Case, watched them fall in love with each other, and he had no choice but to leave sadly. My eyelashes trembled. I didn't expect that he had helped me even earlier than Case. I waited for him to continue, but he didn't go on. His pair of peach blossom eyes made people feel hot when looking at them, and then he was so eager to find out my feelings. Saraphina, he curled his lips. Axel stood up and seemed to say casually, that dog of the Z family has always been well behaved and doesn't run around randomly. It's very obedient to its owner. Axel took me to the police station to file the case. The post on the school forum was still there. It was said that Ophelia had been trying to delete the post all the time but couldn't. It was just like that day when the forum suddenly had a bug, and the anonymous function was cancelled. The comments below had already turned against her. Axel and I also took a look at the content of the post. He was quite dissatisfied with the part that said I was too timing and sneered, "What a lousy guy Case is. Is he even worth your attention?" The result of the case came out quickly. Not only was Ophelia required to make a public apology, but I also received some financial compensation. It was neither too much nor too little, just enough for me to break free from the control of the Ophelia family and cover my tuition and living expenses. Ophelia admitted that she had been spreading rumors to some extent. It was also an admission in disguise that she was the one of unknown origin and that she was the illegitimate daughter. After this incident, her condition became even worse. Never rains but it pours. The business of the Ophelia family also suddenly took a downturn, but it had nothing to do with me. I accepted the compensation from the Ophelia family, held a bag of yogurt in my mouth, and typed on my phone, "Saraphina." I knew that justice would give me an answer. "Axel, what about me?" I thought for a while and typed a line with my head down, "Saraphina, Axel will lead me to justice." There was no message from the other side for a long time. I put down my phone to do my homework. When I remembered to check it again, a new message had been there for a long time. Axel sent a voice message. The boy's voice was low and hoarse, slowly flowing out from the receiver. "Saraphina, what should I do? I feel like you're about to win my heart." Under the camphor tree, the boy in a white shirt had been standing for a long time. The fragmented sunlight fell on Case, looking very soft. I passed by the tree but was stopped by him calling my name. I turned around, not knowing why Case looked at me with a rather complicated expression. It was hard to tell whether it was a look of relief or something else. "Sorry," he pursed his lips. I had never thought that Case would say these two words. He didn't seem as unapproachable as Axel, but he was prouder than anyone in his heart and would rather die than lower his head. I asked patiently, "Is it for the matter that you misunderstood me as an illegitimate daughter?" Case stared at me for several seconds before answering in a low voice, a bit hesitantly, "For all the things that happened before. Ophelia has told me for many years that she had a half-sister. I was prejudiced and just believed her." Seeing that I didn't show much expression, Case lowered his eyes, looking a bit fragile like glass. "Have you met my younger brother?" I had met him before I traveled back. He was a cute little chubby boy who liked to run after Case. But Case's attitude towards him was neither warm nor cold and could even be considered bad. Case was silent for a moment and then revealed his own wound. "He's the child of the woman my father kept outside." I realized belatedly that Case's contradictory attitude towards me was just because he subjectively imposed his own pain on me. He even went so far as to help the people of the Ophelia family deceive me because, in his eyes, I owed them all these. Case suddenly called my name with his eyebrows curved. He raised his eyes, holding his breath. He hadn't seen me smile at him for a long time. I heard Case's heart full of sourness, but I really liked Saraphina. "I like you," I said. Just after I said this, I saw Case's eyes and eyebrows light up. I sneered. She actually believed it. How disgusting. Case must understand that some things can't be redeemed just by an apology. I gave these words back to him. Case lost his balance. He looked at me quietly and painfully. Perhaps at this moment, he finally realized what he had lost. A lazy voice rang out from behind me, carrying a hint of dissatisfaction. I quickly turned around. Axel was standing not far behind us, holding a strawberry-flavored ice cream in his hand. His peach blossom eyes narrowed, and I felt like I was caught cheating by my legitimate partner. I didn't care about Case anymore and trotted towards Axel. As a result, I slipped halfway and bumped into Axel's arms. Axel steadied my body, but he hissed. I quickly apologized. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Where does it hurt? Axel took my hand and pressed it against the place of his left atrium. Under my palm was his hot heart beating vigorously and rapidly. I raised my head. There was no sign of pain on Axel's face at all. Instead, he lowered his eyes to look at me with an affectionate look in his eyes. It hurts here. I was tricked. I turned around to leave but was gently pulled back by Axel. He sighed. Dear Miss Saraphina, I can understand if there are other boys around you, but as the person you're pursuing, I'm a bit insecure. So I've decided to change the term pursuit target by removing 2 words. Guess what it is? Pursuit. Axel tightened his grip a little and gritted his teeth. It's partner. I couldn't hear the inner thoughts anymore. All I could hear were the thumping sounds of our 2 hearts. Nobody said a word, and the sunlight poured down. Anyway, there's still a long way to go in life. Anyway, this is still a new beginning. Actually, Axel, the school bully of number 1 middle school, isn't that hard to win over.